Hi everyone, this is Olu with the Avada Solutions team. Today we're going to go through a financial accounting transaction analysis exercise using modified data from the City of Somerville, put together by the professors from iteachaccounting.com. The City of Somerville, Massachusetts posts this checkbook online for public use, and this data analytics activity uses the City of Somerville checkbook dataset for the years 2013 through 2016 and contains more than 55,000 records. So the questions that we're going to try to answer today are as follows. So the first question is from 2013 to 2016. What was the total spending in each of the 4 calendar years? In each of the years between 2013 and 2016, how much was spent in each of the 3 categories of government, between education, general government, and public works? The third question is in 2016, which account, and we'll use the field account description, was the largest in the general government category? And the fourth is in 2016, who was Somerville's largest vendor as measured by total dollars spent, and how many separate payments did the city make to this vendor? What was the average amount of each payment to this vendor, and why did the city pay this vendor? The fifth question is how much in expenditures did Somerville have related to property, plant, and equipment? We'll use the item class for that. In the general government categories in each of the 3 years, 2013 through 2016. How much expenditures in each of those years were related to repairs and maintenance. And then lastly, we're going to prepare a pivot table that shows a line chart of Somerville's expenditures in each of the 3 categories of government for the years 2013 through 2016. We're going to prepare a pivot chart using the line chart type of this information in the same spreadsheet, and we'll analyze the pivot chart and summarize the trends. So I'll run it really quick so I can load the data up so we can get a preview of it. So we'll see the item number really is like a unique identifier for each transaction. The category of government is self-explanatory, the vendor name as well, the amount for each transaction along with the check date, the department, the check number, the organization description, account description, and last but not least, the item class. So this is the data that we're going to work with, and we're going to use Alteryx to solve and answer these 6 questions. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to take a look at the data and we're going to use our select tool to get an understanding of what data types are being used. So a string is normally for characters A through Z. For numbers we normally use double, and then for a true false we would use a Boolean field type. And so what we can see right away is that the amount field seems to have some spaces in the beginning of it and maybe even some spaces towards the end. So we can go ahead and just rename that to amount, without all those spaces, just so that we don't confuse ourselves or accidentally type an amount without the spaces and would call the wrong field or reference the wrong field in the formula. And another really useful thing that I've done here is that I've actually just added a description for each of the field names. So you can see the item number is a unique identifier for each transaction, the category of government, and there's 3 divisions of government. So just giving some context to these fields. And you're able to do that right within the select tool. So if someone were to go and review this, they can actually go in and check, this is the select tool, these are the fields that this individual was or is working with, and here's kind of a description of what these fields mean. Because oftentimes you have a field that's very condensed, or just saying amount, but amount of what? Is it the amount of the check, the amount of transactions? It's great to have this description behind the actual field names as well. So to answer this first question, which is from 2013 to 2016, what was the total spending in each of the 4 calendar years? So the first thing I've done is I've created the column of check date year. And what I'm actually doing is I'm going to use the formula time date year of the check date formula, or the check date field. So if we go back to our select tool, you'll see that the check date is a date function, right? But if I take a look at it, it's giving me the full date. So YYY, or the year, YYYY, the year, dash, 01, which is the month, and then dash 02, which is the day. So what I'm effectively trying to do with this formula tool is just strip out the year, right? So you'll see that my date time year formula is taking, in this data preview, we'll see that I'm just taking 2013. So it is simply just the year, right? And the reason that I'm doing that is because I'm actually going to use that column in the next tool. So this is the summarize tool, and what it allows me to do is essentially condense all my information into a summary It's similar to a pivot table, but it shows the information more vertically versus it being horizontal with columns. So you'll see that I'm able to see the date or the year for each year in the question, so 2013 through 2016, and I actually summed by the amount, right? So you can see that I renamed it, I have it so there's no leading or trailing spaces, so I'm grabbing that new named amount field, and I'm actually just going to sum it, right? And so when I take a look at the answer, you'll see that I have every date and the amount of checks for each year, which is going to answer our first question. The second question is, in each of the years 2013 through 2016, how much was spent in each of these three categories of government: education, general government, and public works? So here I'm going to create a more traditional pivot table. And so I'm actually going to take the category of government as the value that it's going to get grouped by. Then I'll change the column header to the year, right? So those will be the new columns in the pivot table. And then for the values, I'm actually going to do the amount, right? And you can see that I can either sum the amounts or have them average or they count. I'm also going to include a total column and a total row so that I'll be able to see, the total amount of spend for each year, but then also the total amount of spend of every year for each category. So if I take a look at the browse tool, we'll see that I have, the three categories of government, so education, general government, public works, and then the total column that I created on the end. And it'll give me the sum of 2013, 2014, 15, and 16, with the total of all 4 years being on the right, and the total of each year being on the bottom for, all of the categories combined. So this answers our second question. Our third question is, in 2016, which account, and we're going to use the field account description, was the largest in the general government category? So what I can do is I'll use a filter tool to take that column that I created, right, which is the check date year, and I'm going to make sure that the only thing flowing through the T side or the true anchor is 2016. So I can click this drop down and I'll select equals 2016. And you can see that on the false side, I have all these dates, right? So 2013, I might be able to get to 14. This is just a preview, so I cannot. But you'll see that the only thing coming out of the true side is 2016 as we kind of, expressed in that formula. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a summarize tool again. It's like a pivot, but it's more vertically driven, or the presentation is more vertical. And I'm going to group by the account description. So that's what I'm going to have for each row. And then the amount calculated in the column, I'm going to do just the amount column, right? And then what we'll see is every single account description and the amount related to them within this data set. And I know that this is 2016 because I filtered for it in the tool before. So the next thing I want to do to help me answer this question a little quicker is I'm going to sum by the amount, and I'm going to have it descending. Right, so the largest number is at the top and the smallest number is at the bottom. So you can see that if I scroll all the way to the top, my largest number is bond anticipation note, and I can see the amount was $50 million, which is much higher than the MWRA assessment, which came in at $23 million. So if I just take a look at my browse tool, I'm able to answer that question all by using this workflow. Now we're going to go to question number 4. Which is in 2016, who was Somerville's largest vendor as measured by total dollars spent? How many separate payments did the city make to this vendor? What was the average amount of each payment to this vendor? And why did the city pay this vendor? So I can take my information and I can actually leverage the tool that I used in the old question by saying, okay, this is just giving me transactions for 2016. Well, conveniently, in this question, it's only asking about 2016. So I already have step 1 complete. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to group everything by the vendor name, right? I'm going to get the count of the amount, so it'll tell me how many individual transactions. I'm also going to get the average amount, right? And it's going to be average amount by vendor because that's what I'm grouping by. And then I'm also going to get a sum of the amount by vendor once again. So as you can see, this workflow is already run, so we can see the results immediately. And I can get a count or number of transactions by this vendor with an average amount and then the total amount to the right of it. So what I'm actually going to do here is now in the sort tool is I'm going to do largest to smallest. So taking the sum amount column and making it descending, and that's going to help me answer this question, right? Who was the largest vendor as measured by total dollars spent? I can see that it's US Bank with 104 transactions, an average amount of 585,000, and a total amount of just shy of $61 million. How many separate payments did the city make to this vendor? I can see that there was 104 payments in 2016. Remember, because the information came from here, it was filtered through the T anchor. I'm using it again here, and then I'm sorting here, right? So I know just by default that I don't have to see any dates in the columns or anything like that because I know that this is year 2016. So I look at the browse tool and the same answers, right? So you can either look at the right side of the anchor or the browse tool. It'll show you the same results. But it's good to know that the browse tool will actually allow you to see all of the results versus just a preview. So if I go back to this tool and just show you, how many records I'm able to see, it'll show you, just shy of 5,000. So 4898 of 41239. Or just shy of 5,000 with just over 41,000 records in this coming out of this F anchor. But if I attach the browse tool to the bottom of that, and I'll just move it here and I'll rerun quickly, you'll see that when I click this tool, it'll show me all 41,000 records, right? So now I have a list of every single last record. You can see by the record number down here at the bottom, 41,239. I have 41,239 records displayed. So it does give you the ability to see everything, but it's also just a nice way to close off your tools at the end, right? Because you want to look at this before you just saw this hanging and thought someone didn't complete their work. So if I scroll down a little bit, I'm just going to filter by US Bank, right? And this is coming from that 2016 true anchor again. And now that I know the answer is the US Bank from the first question, I can now just isolate these individual transactions in the filter tool down below, right? So now you can see that all of the 104 records displayed here, all US Bank. And so what I want to do now is I'm actually going to group by the vendor name, which I know should be all US Bank. I'm also going to grab the account description, right? Because that's going to let me know what they're paying for or what we're paying them for. And I'm also going to do the count amount, the average amount, and then the sum of the total amounts as well, right? So, looking at this tool, I can see that, most of the payments, right, are coming from a bond anticipation note. Right, so payments on a debt. And so, that is the reason why the city paid this vendor. Question number 5 reads, how much in expenditures did Somerville have related to property, plant, and equipment in the general government category in each of the years 2013 through 2016? How much in expenditures in each of those years were related to repairs and maintenance? So the first step in this is I'm going to use a filter tool to isolate the transactions in the category of government that is equal to general government. So as you can see, I'm using a basic filter, and the field that I'm going to use the expression on is category of government. I'll say equals general government. And what that does for me is that all of the records that meet this requirement or make this expression true will flow out of the T or true node. The second step is to use another filter to separate the item class for property, plant, and equipment. So I'm going to use, again, a basic filter. This time I'm going to use item class as the field. The expression will be equals, and I'm going to have it equal property, plant, and equipment. So using this summarize tool, I'm going to sum the total amount of all of these transactions. So as you can see, to answer the first part of question number 5, the total amount spent related to property, plant, and equipment in the general government category is $51.7 million. The next part of the question is asked how much in expenditures how much of these expenditures are related to repairs and maintenance. So while I've used, the transactions coming out of this T node in the summarize tool, I can also use the same information and push it to another filter, right? So now all the processes that were done here can be re-leveraged going forward. The next step is to take this filter tool and I'm going to look at the org description field. And if it contains maintenance or repair, it'll pass through the T or true node. As you can see in my expression, as you can see in the filter, I've used the expression contains the field in which I'm referencing, and then what that field needs to contain. So as you can see, I've used the first 5 characters of maintenance because that will pick up any abbreviations and it'll also pick up the actual word maintenance. I've also done repair. So same expression contains the field org description and then the actual and then what that org description has to contain. It's important to note that I'm using the or function because either of these expressions can hold true so that record will be pushed through the T side. So that means whether it's repair or maintenance, it'll go through the T side. If this were to say and, they would have to, this org description field, which is here, would have to say main and repair. By using or, I can grab both. So to answer the second part of this question, I want to separate by year. So I'll use a Crosstab tool, which is similar to a pivot table, and I am going to group the data by the org description. I'm going to change the column headers to the year, and I want the values for each of the column to be the amount. And the way that I'm going to aggregate everything is by summing everything together. So as you can see, my org description, which is all of my maintenance and repair expenses. You can see my item class for everything is all property, plant, and equipment. And you'll actually be able to see the amounts that I have for each year. So you see that it automatically prefixes it with the word sum, underscore, and then the year, because that is the method for aggregating the value. So if I scroll down to the bottom, I'll get my totals. So the total for 2013 was 553,000. For 2014 was 3.2 million. For 2015, we have 1.2 million. And for 2016, we have 556,000. For question number 6, we want to prepare a table that shows a line chart of Somerville's expenditures in each of the 3 categories of government: education, general government, and public works for the years 2013 through 2016. So first I'll start by using the tool that we just referenced, which is the Crosstab tool. Also, familiar for those Excel users, this is how you would create a pivot table as well. And I'm going to group the data by category of government. So this will give you my education, my general government, and then my public works. I'm going to use the column headers year because we want between the years 2013 and 2016. And then I'm going to have the values for each of the columns be the amount. And again, I'm going to aggregate based on the sum. So by looking at this data, I can now see that for each of the 3 categories of government, I have the total for the actual year, and then the total of all 3 for the year as well. Now to show a line chart, I'm actually going to take the data and I'm going to summarize it. And the reason I'm going to summarize is because I want my data to be in a vertical format so that it's easier for this interactive chart tool to consume the data and spit out a chart. So for this, I'm going to group by year, which you can see the year in this column here. I'm also going to group by the categories of government, which you'll be able to see in this column here as well. And then lastly, I'll sum everything and it'll be by the amount field, right? So now I have in 2014, the general government category spent $85 million. And you can see that here. This red corner, you can see it's kind of giving me a warning. That's simply saying that this display value is rounded to 6 decimal places for clarity, right? So that's just letting you know that what you see here is not the actual value that's in the cell, right? This could be 0.2854321 or whatever the number might be, but it's just giving you, to 2 decimal places. That data is going to go into the interactive chart tool. If I hit configure chart, we'll see that there's a layer that I've created. The type is going to be a line chart. The x-axis is going to have the date or the year, and then the y-axis will actually have the amount. If I click this transforms tab over here, we'll see that I can group it by the category of government. So now this yellow line or orange line, I have my general government. This green line, I have my public works. And this blue line, I actually have my education. So you can see general government had, a majority of the budget for all 4 years. If I want to look at this data set in the Browse tool, you'll see it show up in the configuration pane or the configuration window. If I drag this out, it'll give me a nice clean look at the data, and it'll also let me do a little bit of a zoom in, which I think is a really cool feature. So I can actually take this part of the chart, highlight it, and now it'll just show me that piece, right? So now I'm just looking at the general government. I can go to each one of these points and see the amount that was spent. And if I double click, it'll zoom me back out into the whole table. And this concludes our exercise. I hope you found this helpful. For more Alteryx and Excel tips for accounting and finance professionals, subscribe to our channel and visit our website for more information. Thank you and have a great day.